How's everybody doing? Good. In the U.S. where I'm from, they always say save the best for last. And so, being last year, we're excited to chat with you. Aaron McDaniel, I'm a professor at UC Berkeley and also co-author of Global Class, which is a playbook for how to build a global company. Excited to talk a little bit about global growth today with Heini and with Bhumi. In the research for the book, we talked to over 400 executives from more than 50 countries. And everyone basically said they were making things up as they went along, wasted a lot of time and money. So we created a playbook to help about that. And in particular, why I'm excited today is we're talking about both sides of the expansion process. So Way.com a little bit earlier in global growth, and then Vivino, who's reached global scale. So why don't we start, Heini? I imagine most know, but talk a little bit about Vivino.
Yeah, sure. Vivino is the world's largest wine app, a community of 60 million users around the world. And well, basically, you can take a picture of any bottle of wine, and we'll give you all the information. We'll give you rating, taste, everything, and then you can also buy the wine on Vivino. That's our business model. We are a global community, which means that our users are basically all over. Our biggest market is the US, but only 20% of our users are there, right? So we have to be global, or else we can't leverage our users. So me personally, we started the company in Copenhagen in 2013. I moved to the US, stayed in the US from 13 till 20. I'm back in Europe now. So, yeah, it's been a crazy journey, obviously, but yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. And Bhumi.
Yes, so Way.com is a car super app. We're established in the United States, over 300 major cities. We also have parts of Canada that we work in. And basically what we are is we offer in a consolidated application EV charging, fuel, car insurance, booking for parking. We also do car washes. So the idea is consolidation, convenience, but we also offer cost savings. So we're trying to make car ownership more affordable. So we save consumers about 15% if they actually use the application. We're going to be projected to close 200 million at the end of the year, 430 weighers.
Good job.
Nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Heini, why don't we start with you? I should call you Sir Heini. So, Heini was knighted by the Porto Wine Association. So, here in Portugal, we'll call you Sir Heini. So, let's talk a little bit more about uncovering the right localizations you need to be successful. So, we have a tool in our book called the Business Model Localization Canvas. We talk about how government regulation and culture affect all aspects of business. So especially with food and beverage, that's really relevant, right?
Yeah, or should we say any sort of regulated industry, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
It's a good thing if you go into a new market to figure out, is what you're doing actually legal? So if you're in alcohol, for instance, you have to be extremely careful. I remember a story when, before we launched in the US, one of our US investors said, hey, you better get this right, or else they're going to be FBI agents storming your office, right? Yeah. And you want to try and avoid that. But in the US, it's highly regulated. You have to do it in a very specific way. But then we also have a lot of users in South Korea. And in South Korea, it's illegal to sell alcohol online. Russia was another. We would never go to Russia today. But back then, they said it's also illegal to ship. But they said they would do it, but they would call you first and say, are you a policeman? And if you said no, they would deliver it to you. But many different rules in different countries, and you have to follow those rules, especially in a highly regulated space.
Absolutely. So when it comes to approaching global scale, global class companies, as we call them, have a different DNA. And so part of it is in their team building, and part of it is in how they go about determining company readiness for growth. Talk a little bit about how Way.com has gone through that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideology of Way when we started was really to gain talent wherever we could find it. Yeah. For us, it was no issue where folks worked, whether they were in the San Francisco Bay Area at headquarters. It was perfectly fine. So as part of that effort, we actually opened up a Way India office and also a Way Colombia office, and we made autonomous teams, and they consist not just of engineering and customer support, but we also have HR managers and directors, we have SEO experts, we have content writers, we have our operations and our account management teams, and they're fully self-sufficient, they're autonomous. They work independent of a headquarters. And so the idea was that we wanted to make sure our partners and our customers had 24/7 access and support because we wanted to be competitive in this space.
Yeah.
So that was really, really critical for us.
Sure. Well, the other thing, as you're expanding, you have teams now with a local presence and a local understanding to be able to continue.
Absolutely, and that's critical because in order for us to even think about going into the next global market, right? What is that global market going to be? We wanted to make sure we had presence and we understood the business model, the contractual model, the culture to engage and to do business.
Absolutely. Yeah, a little bit of what Heini was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, culture is, if you want to get into that, is a big thing, and I'm thinking leadership too. And if you look at startups and scale-ups, you would think the culture is very similar. You meet a founder from the U.S. We speak the same language. When it actually comes to leadership, there are big differences. I'm from a more Nordic style of leadership, which is very direct, can be a little bit painful at times, but we tell things as they are, and we also give a lot of responsibility and say, hey, we'll give you this, go run with it. And US is a little bit more sort of top controlled, and I kept my style, and some people liked it, some didn't, but the people that liked it really embraced it and so on. So there are many ways to attack that. That's one thing. Another big thing I want to say is trust. Trust is very cultural too, right? So where I come from, there's trust in people, in systems, and so on. US, that is harder. It's just there's less trust in the systems, and that was a big difference for me.
So digging a little bit deeper, you're talking about culture and other things. So often when companies are localizing for new markets, they go too much into the go-to-market side. They think we got to change the language, marketing, pricing, we're done. But there's so much more, and I'm sure that there was a lot for Vivino. I remember hearing a story from you about France in particular, of the shipment model versus pickup and whatnot.
Yeah. So it's very different. Like if you, in France, for instance, we have done okay in France as an app. We've done amazingly well. As selling wine, not so well. And one of the reasons is because, well, there is a shop every 100 meters where you can buy wine in France, obviously. But also there's more pickup. You have to adapt to those things. That's one thing. Another thing is basic things like, okay, we would put meters into the app. Like, what's the distance? It's like meters and kilometers. And at one point I met with Apple. Yeah, you can put meters in there, but you're not going to get featured in the US if it is in miles. So you can do whatever you want, but you should really adapt to the local market. Language is fine, but it's not enough.
Sure. So all of those localizations lead to complexity, right? And a lot of companies, they don't think proactively about it. They prioritize speed, and then they hit a wall and they go, oh no, we got all these models we got to manage. So Way.com has taken a little bit different of approach. So when it comes to market selection, strategy development, market entry, how are you thinking about complexity ahead of time? Yeah,
we certainly are looking at other case studies, right? Other business use cases. We want to learn from other people's mistakes. And so we look at companies who thought of, let's go to the largest market. And for us, that's really not critical. Not the largest, not the English-speaking market necessarily, or not even the market.
You're in Canada, right?
Pardon?
What about French?
Maybe, we'll see. But not even necessarily, I would say, if they are familiar with super apps. So for us, we're taking a step back. What's the behavior pattern with car products and services in the space? How do they engage with suppliers? What do those relationships look like? Big companies like Google and eBay have tried to go into China, for instance, and realized later, oh my gosh, the cultural barriers and regulatory barriers. So we want to make sure we can anticipate as much as possible, right? We don't have surprises going into it.
But there are different strategies there, right?
Yes.
Because you're saying you anticipate, and we do that too. Just we're a little bit more careful. Also, it's alcohol. But someone like Uber, they had a very different strategy, right? Yeah. They decided to challenge every single thing. Yeah. And I think that in some markets they were thrown out and they had a hard time coming in again, right? So it's a bit of it can be a good strategy, but it's also a risky strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, within the global class mindset we saw, it's taken a little more nuanced of approach, not just making it all about disruption, but making it about how can you be a contributor to the communities that you do business in. So let's talk a little bit more about people and team building, Heini. So we talk about this term in our book we call being an interpreneur, as in international. It's a global mindset, a growth mindset, this cultural mindset in particular that's unique that helps companies expand in new markets. Cultural sensitivity, empathy to understand and localize a business. But when it comes to managing, that also can be very difficult. So you had a global team, Europe, US, other places. Talk a little bit about how you manage given those differences.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we have those people there, and that is obviously our mindset. And I think automatically we'll attract those people and maybe push some of them away. Some people like it, some don't.
Well, that's where culture comes in too, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think very much so. So I think we see them, but I'm not sure I have like a specific sort of comment on as such.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Bhumi, right now, because of the economic climate, a lot of companies are pulling back.
Yeah.
For some that are maybe a little more forward-thinking, it's a great opportunity to expand. How is Way.com looking at that?
Yeah, it's interesting. For us, or you would think it'd be counterintuitive for us to go into the next market at this stage. But the premise of Way.com, the mission is really to make car ownership more affordable. And as you know, rise in gas prices everywhere.
It's like the number one topic.
Right.
People talk about inflation.
It's all over the news.
Yeah.
Inflation, double digits in the UK. Even the cost of car premiums, the car insurance premiums are on the rise. Yeah. So for us, we're looking at this as maybe this is the best time for an add value proposition to the next market. So we're looking at that in a completely different way, despite the economic downturn.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about pulling back. I mean, when the economy is extremely hot, getting into a market and paying for rent, it's really, everything is actually hard in a really hot market. So right now there's a lot of unknowns, so people are pulling back. But if we stabilize at some lower level here and there, then I think expansion is a good thing. You should really, that's when you expand, invest, get into the markets. You work in the Bay Area, right?
Yes.
I mean, when the market is hot, just renting a space is really,
very
everything's
challenging.
hard, right?
Yes.
So both of you talked a bit about autonomy and trust and how that's important in building a global team. We have 4 what we call commitments for effective global scaling within our book. The others being resource alignment, communication and clarity, two-way communication, as well as what we call the global agile methodology, or thinking about complexity as you iterate in new markets. So Heini, how have those other commitments, in addition to trust, been really important for you, or any other commitments you guys made as you scaled?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a tricky one because people come to work for you, and when they take a job, they expect the company's going to stay there and be there, their job's going to stay there. And as a startup, you have a certain amount of runway. And when we talk about this, you have to make whatever maximum commitment to that, otherwise you're not going to be able to attract the right people. If you come in, sort of fly in and look like someone who's going to stay there for 3 months, you're not going to get the right people on board. So
we call that launching and leaving, right? You don't,
exactly.
You're not going to
do
get
that.
successful.
So to give you an example, what we did was, me as the CEO and founder, I went over there, put my feet on the ground and built the company in the US. My co-founder stayed in Copenhagen, and that's a really good commitment. It shows like, okay, the CEO founder is here, they are pretty serious, and the communication you give people is going to be binary. We are here to stay. And if you're not there anymore, you go out. There's no in between, like maybe. Either you're there or you're not there. That's how I see it.
And then once you were there, you started hiring a local team.
Yes.
Right? And that's a really key thing, is you need to have the company knowledge and the local knowledge, right? And if you had the company knowledge, but you didn't necessarily have the local knowledge, building.
We're in this weird situation where when we go into a market, we already have a lot of users. So we open up for certain business models, but a lot of the users are there already. So we are open certain things up.
So actually along those lines, I think one of the big metrics companies look at when they're expanding to new markets and choosing which ones to go to is they look at organic growth. And they say, okay, we see it there, we got to go there. That's not always the best strategy.
No.
When you think about all the government, the culture, all of those other things,
that's an easy mistake to make. And a couple of comments on that. For instance, Brazil was our number 2 for a very, very long time. But selling wine in Brazil is incredibly hard. Doing business in Brazil is actually hard. And actually, Russia was the top 5 market for us for a very, very long time on the user side, but we decided never to go there. And that turned out to be a good decision too. If we just follow the numbers, we would have been in Russia, for example, and probably not been a good business.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to being a global class company, as we call it, it's not just about bringing a cool product and bringing jobs to a market, but it's being like, a positive contributor to those communities. We kind of have a call to action at the end of our book to say there's like a responsibility. Everything from, paying taxes instead of attempting to avoid it completely, and supporting ecosystems instead of disrupting it, like we were talking about with Uber. So, when it comes to some things, right, sustainability as an example. Bhumi, you were talking about the mission of Way.com being to make car ownership more affordable and accessible. That can have some, environmental repercussions. So how do you, deal with that side of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly. So when we go into any market, if we decide to do that, we want to be socially, economically, and environmentally having a positive impact in the community. So of course, helping people get more jobs, adding new revenue streams. But for sustainability efforts, surprisingly, we're taking on a big undertaking, and what we're doing twofold. Yeah. One is we've consolidated all the EV network onto the Way.com's application. Yeah. So we're working with the manufacturers and these suppliers to make sure that consumers have not searchability, access, and transactability on the app. Yeah. Okay, that's one big piece. And then the other big piece is parking. You wouldn't find it to be the case.
It's like, I heard it's like 30% of all traffic, at least in San Francisco I heard that.
It's true. So it's interesting, but when you're actually, the drivers that are actually around the city, 30% of them are actually looking for a parking spot. So they're adding to the congestion, right? And they're, of course, the carbon emissions. Yeah. So if we can get them to a parking spot sooner, we can reduce those carbon emissions. We know that on average, a 22 miles per gallon vehicle actually emits 5 tons of carbon per year, okay? So if we can help to bring that down.
I can't do the math,
right?
But yeah.
So,
I understand, yeah.
we look at it from a sustainability point of view, and it's interesting, you think parking of all.
Sure. So I think we have time for one more question. Heini, I'll end with you as someone who has gone through this global growth process. If you had one piece of advice for someone, leaders in companies that are expanding their businesses to new market, to get to that global scale, what do they got to do?
Yeah, I think I will give you sort of two-sided advice here. It's first and foremost, you're always going to underestimate the complexity once you go in. Yeah. You think, oh, this is easy, just change the language and boom, we go. There's always going to be more complexity than you think. Yeah. And secondly, when you do it, commit. You got to say, okay, I'm going in, I'm going full. There's no half-ass here, especially if you go to a market like the US or the big markets. You got to go all in. That's really important.
Absolutely. Well, Bhumi, Heini, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with both of your global growths of your companies. Appreciate your insights.